So, John Audio,
Yeah.
what is the best synthesizer in your opinion?
Okay, now everyone's probably like popped up in their chairs like, what the fuck? If my synth is not featured here, I'm going to be pissed off, right? That's probably what everyone's thinking. That's a good question.
Yes.
Right?
I know.
I mean, it really comes down to what are you doing with it, right? I mean, what are your needs? What do you want it to sound like?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, do you approach it differently? I mean, do you have a favorite one, the OG?
I have, I've said on this podcast before, the best synth is the one right in front of you. And I mean, really, that's absolutely 100% true. It doesn't really, if you have, an idea and if you have a motivation, the drive to do something, it doesn't matter if you have a free synthesizer in front of you or a $500 synthesizer. Like you can make that happen. I've heard brilliant pads and plucks and basses come from Surge XT, and I've heard them come from $3,000, Andromedas and, Oberheims. Like it really doesn't make a difference. It's all about the person who's, like I said, your motivation and what kind of inspiration that you have, just to use the tools that you have available. So that being said, what is even quantify the best synth? That's what we should talk about. Yeah. So let's get into it, John.
Yeah, dude, it's funny you mentioned Surge XT because, in the free synth world, the first one that pops into everyone's mind is going to be Vital, right? Which is great. That's cool. That's awesome. But Surge, holy crap, man, that one sounds good.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny that we're even
weird, but
that Vital, I mean, it came when it burst on the scene, like that was a huge deal because it was like no one had ever seen the pricing structure like that. No one had ever seen, a synthesizer that was that easy and that accessible. A lot of people have claimed that it's abandonware. I don't agree with that. I think that Vital.
They've said that it's abandonware.
Yeah, I mean,
Surge.
No, for Vital.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just because Matt, the developer, he doesn't have to. Of course, he's doing his thing in the background, but he's not as vocal as some other developers. I mean,
it still works though. It's still like
oh my god, yeah. It's. I mean, there are some bugs in the current version, but. That aside, so when Vital burst on the scene, that was like automatically the go-to as far as the free category. But Surge came along way before it, and VCV Rack was there way before, and there was other. I mean, I was even used like free synthesizers back in the day, like Crystal and like these other weird synthesizers that were like free, and it was like wow, like that was my first exposure really between free versus paid. My first paid synthesizer that I bought was Zebra. That was my first ever synth.
I didn't know that. Wow. Yeah. What made you? That's a crazy one to buy for the first. I
was on this forum back in the day called OSX Audio or OS10 Audio. It was a Mac only like audio community, and Urs was on that forum.
Of course he was.
And he was like, "Hey guys, I have this new synthesizer coming out. It's called Zebra." And everybody was like, "Oh wow, this sounds cool." Blah blah blah. And it was like, if you ever Google the pictures of Zebra 1.0.
Oh, I know, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it was real primitive, like, you know what I'm saying? From the graphics all the way down to like, I mean, the sound was great. And that's what convinced everybody on that forum, like, we really need to invest in this. And that's how Yuhi got its start, was that right there. It was
and you're morphing waveforms at that time. I mean, that's that's
it was
pretty crazy.
KVR, but really that OS10 Audio group was like because it was like everybody was so enthusiastic, about the Yuhi product. So that's how Yuhi got its start. And I was there at that time. For some reason, I was on that forum and I was making music, and I wasn't making even the music I make now. I was just making random stuff. I was into it. And
that's a big synth to get for that. Holy crap. When you first installed it and you loaded up, were you like, what is going on here? The
intro price was like $79 or something. Like it was some like really low price for what it was. And I forget the year. It must have been 2004 or 5, something like that. So anyway, I invested in that because I really felt like, wow, this is going to be a step up. Did it improve the quality of my music? That's subjective, right? Because like I said, from the beginning of this podcast, it's all about what you do with the synthesizer. It doesn't matter if it costs a lot of money. It's a matter of who's got the hands on it and what you're doing it with, and how you're using it, in what context. So that in itself, I mean, now we're getting closer to the heart of the matter. What makes it the best? What makes it, worthy, right? What makes it worthwhile in your arsenal? So I think we can start there at that point and just be like, okay, well, what are the qualities of each synthesizer that, really could improve the quality of your music. What are the different features that it has? And I honestly believe, as far as even we're talking software synthesizers, there is a difference between software and hardware synthesizers, and it's not necessarily the sound anymore. I don't think that's the issue. A lot of the times, like hardware synthesizers used to sound like something and software sounded like something. Now the two worlds are very close together. Right. Especially when we put companies like Yuhi and Synapse Audio into the conversation. Like, does this sound analog? And it's like, wow, like can you really tell? Can you really tell if this sawtooth comes from a hardware synthesizer or a software synthesizer? Most people cannot anymore because they just sound so good. So again, it's a personal workflow. It's everything that comes down to who you are and what kind of producer you are, and then how you use the synthesizer.
Yeah, and there's a weird thing that I remember people would say way back when. They're like, well, I like to use this one for bass, this one for leads. And at first it can be kind of weird to hear that, right? So you're like, why would I use Serum for bass, or why would I use Avenger for this, or whatever it is, right? Right. And I guess it comes down to workflow, which is kind of what I was saying in the beginning, where it depends on what you're doing. If you're doing a race on a car, if you want to do like a drag race, something kind of like that, right? You're going to pick a fast car. You're not going to pick like a 4-wheel drive Jeep to do that job. But if you're doing some crazy rugged terrain stuff, you kind of don't really want that sports car. And I guess that's the kind of the way to approach that. Yeah. Really, I think the interface and like what it can do can constitute the best in whatever you're doing.
Right. So if you're a beginning producer and you're like, okay, well, I can make a bass in Vital. What would be like, what does making a bass in, say, something like Diva or something like Serum like do for me? Because that has a entry price. There's a whole thing about it, right? And I often use this metaphor in when I'm working with clients or things like that, or people who are wondering about what's the more expensive synthesizer have for me? And that is it's almost like tasting wine, right? When you get to when you start at the bottom. You just get the basic, what do they call it? $2 chuck, right? At Trader Joe's. Like, it's like the basic wines, right? And then you buy the $10 bottle of wine. And that tastes a little better than the $2 chuck. It's like, okay, cool. That's a $10 bottle of wine. And then it's 15, then it's like 30. And then you get under the, $100 bottles of wine, $200 bottles of wine. And it's like, can you really taste the difference between those different things? And if you can, that means you're experienced enough to understand what the differences are.
That is a good analogy.
You have a refined palate. You understand how to taste wine. You know where these grapes were grown and what notes to set for. I don't really taste wine.
What cheese it pairs with.
Right, and what it pairs with, exactly. Yeah. So there's higher levels to this, right? And as a professional sound designer, someone who works with synthesizers every single day, I can tell the difference. Like, I can tell the difference between Serum's filter and another filter that I don't use very much or doesn't have as good quality, in my opinion. Like, I can totally tell. Absolutely. And that's why, when I'm making my own music, I always reach for those synthesizers that I know are going to sound good. And to me, that's Serum, that's Hive 2, that's Omnisphere 2, and Pigments. I mean, these are like my 4 go-tos, right? And I reach for those because I know how they work. And I know what they sound like, and I can get great results every single time. So,
right, and your experience with them too. I think that's a big part of it too. Like, you don't have to think, okay, where do I route the oscillator to the filter? Where is that again? Like, you don't have to think about when you get the technical too much in front of you. It kind of like kills the vibe, right? Sure. You're like, how do I route this? What does this work? Where's the delays at? Where's the effects section? Yeah, that kind of kills your motivation. So if you have a synth that and you come back to it, that could be, I guess, for the best thing. Plus the interface of like, if you're drawing an envelope or an MSEG or something like that, and you want it to be exactly right, maybe a different synth might be more appropriate to that than like Diva, for example, which does sound great, but you only have a certain amount of control over the envelopes, right? You have
exactly
your few different modules, but
there's things that I do with certain synthesizers that I know I can do in those synths. Like they're my go-to, like reliable, whether it's modulation routings or it's the number of oscillators that they have, or anything related to that synthesizer. I know that I can do that. So that's why I reach for them, right? And that's pretty much, once you have like a set palette, you're gonna reach for each synthesizer in any given situation. Like, I know that I can make a great bass with Hive 2 every single time.
I love basses and hype too for some reason. They just come out nice.
They're gonna sound good.
Yeah.
They're gonna have that thump to them. They're gonna have that nice wobbling of the unison. Like it's just everything is gonna be perfect.
Yeah.
And I love that. So I reach for that synth most of the time when I'm looking for something on the low end. I also even reach it if I'm looking for like a different kind of pad, like maybe like a lead sound that has a little bit more variation. I might reach for Hive as well because I know how to work it. I know how the LFOs tie together. I just know how to do its thing. But in the same situation, I might reach for Serum or something, right? So these kind of decisions, like I said, come with experience. They come with time. But when you're a beginning producer or when you're just kind of starting out, there'll be a point where if you're working with, say, Surge, or you're working with Vital, or you're working with just, some basic synthesizer, some basic kit, right?
Yeah.
You'll know when it's time. It's not like, it's something that you have to start with right away. Like I see a lot of guys, this is a really funny example, but like there's a subreddit for modular synthesizers.
Okay.
And there's guys who be like, they go on Modular Grid and they kit out like $3,500, like $4,000 modular rigs. And they're like, is this a great place to start? I think I'm going to buy this right now. Like,
oh, man.
And the guys on there are like, are you kidding? Like,
oh, man.
You have no modulation. Like the routing is all wrong. Like there's not enough filters. Like it's just like crazy. Like people think that like they could just buy their way in rather than kind of like starting very small with say like, piecing together VCV or Cardinal or something, or even starting with just like, an envelope and a VCA and an oscillator or something.
You'll know when you're ready. That's a good point.
You'll know when you're ready. There's no other way around it. It's like, so if everyone who's listening to this understands that, then maybe, then they can start to make informed decisions, after that point. Finally realization happens. It's like, oh, okay. Well, maybe this reverb that I'm using isn't the best reverb for this situation. Maybe I need something different, right? Maybe my basses could sound a little better. But that's where we always talk about G.A.S, right? G.A.S is gear acquisition syndrome.
I was just thinking about that. Yeah. Yep.
Right. That's where G.A.S kicks in. It's like, if I just had that one thing, and we've all been there. I think you've been there. I've been there, and probably most of the people who are listening to this and watching this have been there, right?
Yeah, like I've gotten duped. I wouldn't say duped, but like I've gotten, I guess, suckered into some of them. I guess that's probably the same word, whatever. But like,
sure,
I've seen something cool and fancy out there. I'm like, okay, I'll buy it. Okay,
yeah.
But then like I start to think too. I'm like, if you could use G.A.S as a strategic kind of thing, then it can be helpful, right? So like, let's say you have a really cool analog bass guitar, right? And you're like, I like this. I want to sample this in a lot of different velocities. I want every single note to be perfect. How do I make that into a software instrument, right? You could go the Contact route for sure, absolutely. But if you want something a little bit more modern, you couldn't really do that with Pigments, for example. I love Pigments, but I wouldn't sample my bass because it's hard to manage the samples and all that if you're doing all of those frets and strings and velocities, right?
Sure.
So you'd probably want to reach for something like Falcon because that would be kind of cool. You can set all that up, different key groups. That would be the right tool for the job. So in that case, to sample your bass, Falcon would be the best synth for that, right? You couldn't do that in Divar, for example. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. When you said strategic, I thought you were going to be like, you'd be strategic with your wife, convincing her that you need this one thing.
There's that too, right? You're like, hey, so like, I want it bad enough, so I need it, right? You got to understand that, right? It's like skincare, but for audio.
Listen, we all have our thing, right? We all have our thing. And, for us, it's tools, right? And that's just the tools that come with the trade.
And it brings you joy too, man. I forget, it was one of our podcasts. We said, I'm like, I hope someone's done it by now. But if you get a sine wave and you put that through a reverb and just sit down there and relax, it's so nice.
Or
a saw wave. Or there's days you compare saw waves to different synths. And I did that. Funny enough, I think it was last week. So I was kind of curious. Like, okay, what do these different saw waves do? So I put up the spectrum analyzer, volume matched them, and I got Serum. I did Hive, Pigments, Avenger. Because we're talking about how clean Serum's oscillators are, which I don't think there's no argument there.
No.
And then the question came, what other oscillators are pretty similar to Serum's? I'm like, that is a really interesting question. To which I tried to find an answer, and I think I got pretty close. So I have a lot of synths, right? I put them all up, volume matched them, looked all in the spectrum view. And oddly enough, Avenger 2 was the closest saw wave to Serum.
Wow.
It's kind of interesting, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Back to your point. It's self-care. That's a big word these days. Like
absolutely,
it's self-care. Okay,
absolutely.
Let's just be honest. Like you have this hobby of yours, and you want to put time into it. You want to put energy into it. You're actually helping yourself. You're not harming yourself, right? So making strategic moves at that point is really important. Okay, so what kind of tools do I need? How am I working with this? All that kind of stuff. So back to the topic, the best synthesizer, right? When you get past the paid level, the free level, and you get past Vital and Surge XT, and you're like, all right, I'm already at Serum. Above that, there's a whole plethora of synthesizers which claim to do a lot of different things. And there's only a select few that are kind of like above that, right? And then you start getting into the hardware realm, which is like the hardware prices and things. And at that point, you're not just paying for sound quality, you're also paying for the hardware that's involved. Like chips cost a lot of money these days.
The experience of like moving knobs and all that, yeah.
Right, but you're also, this is something that people don't realize, is you're also getting into a whole different style of workworkflow as soon as you step to that level.
Oh my God, yes. That's good you said. It's a whole different kind of worm.
It's like, oh my gosh, like now you're going to have to completely rethink. And I wasn't ready for that. I was like, honestly, like when I first got my first like real like hardware synth, it was the DeepMind 12.
Oh, good
and
choice,
I was like, yeah, cool. I can't wait to like use this in the studio. And the first time I was like, okay, let's bounce this. And it's like, waiting for your synth to become silent. Here's the 10-second wait. And then here's your 7-minute long, like record. I was like, oh my God, that was just, wow. Yeah. Damn, I've got to do that 12 times per track. You know what I'm saying? Like recording something in real time. And I mean, sure, it's like people who are used to it, like, okay, that's fine. Like, so you really have to be almost intentional about the things that you're doing, like the things that the moves that you make on the synthesizer. Is that filter like set at the perfect point? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like everything about it, you really have to make more, say, informed decisions, or even like more intentional decisions. So that's a whole nother topic, I think, but that's what you are getting into, right? So,
Yeah, and there's a lot of different nuances that if someone's mainly just in software and they're like thinking, maybe want to go for hardware and kind of go through that. Like there's a lot of things to think about. Like one of them, whenever you want to play it through your DAW and, use all your effects, you're going to have to obviously turn it on, route the audio out, whether it's stereo or mono, depending on what synth you got. Into your interface, you're going to have to activate an audio track. Okay, you want it to use MIDI, right? So you're going to have to like set it up that way as well. So there's additional steps that we might not think of, right? And in presets, once we like do something in software and we save it and then we recall something else, if you look down on your knobs, it's kind of a weird thing to say, but if you look down on them, right, they're going to be in different spots every single time. And like you look at the filter cutoff and it's all the way down, but you hear it all the way open. It's because like, okay, you haven't moved enough to like trigger where the actual value is. And that drives me crazy, dude. I don't like looking at a soft or a hardware synthesizer and the knobs lie to me. You know what I mean? It irritates me. So like that's kind of a hard thing to think about as well.
Yeah. So I have my new hardware, go-to is my Hydrasynth Deluxe, right? And I look at it, I mean, I've looked at all my synthesizers like this, but now especially with this thing, it's like I have a nice guitar over there. You know what I'm saying? Or I have a nice instrument. And I use it like that. So I use it on a case-by-case basis. Like when I'm like, okay, I want to play this thing on that piece of kit. So I'll play it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's not my every single sound has to come from this synth kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Because if it was, I drive myself crazy. And if I was only using that, it would be like too much of like one thing.
Like making an entire drum kit within that one?
Yeah, make an entire drum kit, making everything in the bass and waiting for the sequences to go and fire off. Like I work much quicker than that. So, but at the same time, this synthesizer has brought me so much pleasure and so much happiness because it's such a great synth, right? Like there's moments where I'm like, damn, I couldn't do that in any other synthesizer. Like I couldn't, it wouldn't sound like that. You know what I'm saying? And that in itself, like hardware does have its own magic and it has its own mystique, right? So
agreed.
You could say the same about, things in the software world. Like there's things that I can do in Omnisphere 2 that I couldn't do in many other synthesizers. I was like, wow, this is, like I've had so many moments like that where I'm like, this sounds so good. Like it's only because the library is that insane, right? They went through the extra mile to like make the library what it was.
Yeah.
And I know that people are like begging for an update, like, oh, when is Spectrasonics going to release their next thing? Like, it still is good. You know what I'm saying? Like it's still
right. Like at what point does it become vintage again? You know what I mean?
Right. You made the best, so why make it even better? Like it doesn't. Like okay, maybe we'll see some of that. That's again a whole different topic, a whole different day. But when I'm reaching for like, if I really need something atmospheric, I'm gonna reach for that synthesizer. And I'm not
Omnisphere. You mean
Omnisphere? Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. And I've been using it since 20. I was reminded of this morning. Is that I was reading an article. There was just a post on KVR about like, where did Camel Space and Camel Fat go? If you remember, Camel Space and Camel Fat were the two kind of plugins that Camel Audio made that kind of accompanied their flagship synthesizer, Alchemy, right? And Alchemy, this is all, I've told this story on my channel before, but like, I was really into Alchemy when I first started producing ambient in 2012. Like that was one of the first like synthesizers that I invested in after 2012, like to get into ambient. And Alchemy was it was such a great pad synthesizer. It was a great everything. It had wavetables in there. It had it was everything, right?
Yeah.
And everybody loved it. Like it was a well-loved synthesizer. And then all of a sudden, boom, like in I think it was late 2013, early 2014, Camel Audio just shut down. They just closed up shop, shut down. You have 1 month to download your licenses. That's it. No recourse. And everyone's like, what the hell is going on? Like people did not know what was happening. They were pissed. They were angry. And of course the company was dead silent because they couldn't talk about it because they were under contract and obligation, because eventually, as we all know, they were bought by Apple, and that all three of those products got folded into Logic eventually. Alchemy was first. And then
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then Camel Fat and Camel Space, were rolled in as fat effects and step effects as effects in Logic. So those products still live on, but they're like Logicified. Like they're like in Logic, but they're not like the same. So can
you still load up Alchemy now? Since you hopefully you downloaded your license.
I did, but I downloaded it from Mac, and now I'm working on Windows, so I don't have the Windows installers. And even if I did, I have Logic on the Mac over there. So Alchemy is still the same, and it doesn't have that same, like I used it and I was like, you could do some serious production work on that. And if you have Logic, Alchemy is absolutely 100% a solid choice. And I'm making my new record in Logic, just because that's what me and my partner are using. But like, it's like, am I going to use it on my new record? I don't think so. It doesn't have that same like mystique. Anyway, but my whole point of this was when Alchemy got axed, it was like I didn't know what to do. I was like, shit, I use this for every single song, you know what I'm saying? And that was my best synthesizer. Alchemy was my go-to. It was my best synth. And that's where Omnisphere came in. Like Omnisphere went from version 1 to version 2 right around that time. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of money.
That's a good leap to make, though.
It was a lot of money, though. I was like, shit, $450. I mean, $425, whatever they were charging for. I think it was $399. I don't know what it was. But either way, I was like, okay. And keep in mind, Omnisphere 2 wasn't fully fleshed out like it is now. It was kind of like a raw version. It was kind of like just the first 1.0 of the 2.0 kind of upgrade.
Okay.
And so I was like, it didn't have granular, it didn't have all the other shit that it has now. And I was like, okay, go for it. And I was just like, it patched up my wounds. It did everything. It just pat me on the back and said, dude, it's going to be okay. Like, don't worry about it. Like your Alchemy, you can let that go now. You can just like Omnisphere filled all of those cracks. It was amazing. So that was like in 2014, 2015 when that happened. And I've been using it ever since. And a lot of people have come to me for Omnisphere advice because they don't understand it because it's a very complex synthesizer. I don't think it's that complex. There's just a lot you can do with it, And as far as soundscapes, things like that, pads, even beyond that, I use it for bass. I use it for even like lead sounds because it's got a killer arpeggiator and sequencer.
Isn't it 2.5 right now? Is that what it's currently on?
It's 2.8 actually.
Oh, is it really? Wow.
So we're everybody. That's why people are so edgy about it. They're like, oh, is it going to be a 3.0 soon? Like and Spectra's been way quiet. They're like not even revealing a single card in their hand. They're like, nope, we're not.
It's going to be tough for them because they built this legendary synth that many people use, and they're like, okay, everybody wants the next version, maybe version 3. Yeah. You could either make it or break it on that point, I suppose.
I don't know if Eric listens to our podcast. He probably doesn't. He's probably busy working on his new synthesizer. But if he did, he'd probably be like, you know what? A new version, like a 3.0 has to be a 3.0. It can't be like just like a step up. It can't be another like, here's a couple features, here's what we did. No, it's got to be a complete overhaul and a complete revision of that synth and a complete reimagining almost. So I imagine that they're doing a lot of work on the UI. They're doing a lot of work on the internals, getting that thing up to like 3.0.
That's one thing I hear about Omnisphere, because I don't really use it too often, but everyone who I know that use it, they say the interface can feel a little clunky, like adjusting the envelopes and stuff like that. I don't know how true that is. I've seen some people use them. Like maybe. I mean,
because like I said, this was 2014, 2015 when I got it. It's 2024. That was 9 years ago.
Right.
It was state of the art 9 years ago. It was like, okay, this is cool. Like this, and it's only gotten, I think in my opinion, it's only gotten better because number one, they've refined it. Number two, because our CPUs have gotten more powerful. And now I can do things in Omnisphere that I couldn't do when I first got it. But I mean, this is kind of a long aside on the topic, but yeah. Is it the best? Yeah, it's the best. All right. I'm just going to say it's the best. It's the best. It's the best that I have. And I think it's the best. I think it's probably the best sound library that's ever been assembled in a synthesizer.
There's a lot of sounds in there.
There's a lot of sounds in there, and some of them are completely surprising and unexpected. And like I don't ever get bored of searching for sounds in that.
Right. Like, I don't think one person has gone through every single like an Omnisphere owner has never gone through every single preset they offer.
Right. No,
I think it's probably impossible.
I haven't. I certainly haven't. But like I said, I've designed commercial sound banks for it, and I didn't get bored during that process either. I was like, there's so much to work with. Like I don't need.
That's a good point that you bring up. Like if you're doing a whole bank, because that takes a lot of time, and you really become intimate with that synth. So not becoming bored is super important thing, right? Because there's some synths where you're like, okay, I feel like I've used almost everything that there has to offer. It's kind of boring. I'm like, so if you can stay interested in it, that's definitely one of the best quality.
The quality of the effects is still good. That's another thing that we didn't even talk about. We sort of focused on the oscillator part, like the filter part, but like the onboard effects do matter, especially if you don't have third-party effects, like if you don't have all the Valhalla reverbs, you don't have all the whatever else you need, right? Does it have enough internals to withstand? So there's a lot of synths out there, but what did they have the effects to back it up? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if that's all you had,
a good point.
If you were on a goddamn desert island and that's all you had, could you make it with Serum and its effects? You know what I'm saying? Like, could you last?
Something to think about.
Like, it's Serum they were very generous and they offer an effects version and Serum. And
that is helpful.
That is mostly not a lot of people talk about that. I've seen people crap on Serum's reverb. I actually like Serum's reverb. I think it's a good reverb. I don't think it's bad at all.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, I think it's really good. It's not like Sean from Valhalla quality, but it's still good. It's like this is good. I've heard worse. I've heard way worse.
That's true. Yeah.
So anyway, so this brings me to a point that I kind of wanted to make in this and bring this into the conversation is that. A lot of people just dumped on minimal audio because they tried to release Current earlier on, like last year, what is it? We're already 5-6 months out from this. And obviously it was a botched launch. We know that. But they knew that. So I can openly say that on this podcast is that they messed up and they admitted their mistakes and they brought it back as a relaunch of the initial product. And goddamn, that synthesizer is really, really good. And not only that, it comes with some really high quality effects. Like the effects are all of the best of what they offer.
I still haven't tried it yet.
Oh my God.
Do they have a demo?
I don't know.
Like a demo?
Maybe. I think they do. I think it's a 30-day, no questions asked. But so if anybody's wondering, if you should try Current, you probably should because the effects are really freaking good. There are Morphe EQ and all this other kind of Swarm reverb and all this other stuff. It's wow, this is actually creatively inspiring. So when I every time I use Current, I'm like, this is an inspiring synthesizer. Yes, the UI needs some work. I don't think it's as fluid as Serums. I don't think it's as fluid as Vitals. No, it's not, but it's close. And there are some things about Current that I wish could be changed, but there's a lot in there that is really, it kind of makes me go, what else is possible? What else could I do with this thing?
In which situations would you reach for Current?
Well, Current actually started as, they mentioned this on Twitter, is that Current started as a granular synth. Like that was their initial thing. Like we're going to make a granular synth. And surprise, surprise, it's not just a granular synth anymore. Like he said, we started as a granular synth and then just started, we had so much fun with it. We started just adding stuff on. So they added on the oscillators. They added on the FM. They added on all this extra crap. And then it became this huge amalgamation of like what their initial vision was, that it's like, you know, that's a lot to rope in. You know what I'm saying? It was a lot of time, a lot of energy, I'm sure. A lot of production went into that. But they did add all of their high quality effects, which they were known for before Current, into the actual synthesizer.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Right. So every time I use it, I go, damn, this is awesome. I love it. I should probably use it more on the music that I'm making right now, because I think it's very powerful. It does sound good. And I wish, you know, there's things about it that I wish, like I said, that I wish were different, but it's a 1.0 product. It's still a 1.0.
That kind of goes into the best thing, right? So like, you know, some of the things that you don't maybe like as much about it, there's another synth that will carry that weight. So depending on what you're doing,
right,
that's kind of the best one, I guess, to go with, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's it, because what really inspires you as an artist, as a sound designer, whether it's the quality of the presets that are on board or it's the quality of the presets that you can create, you know, that's the best one, because that's the one that is going to get you the best results, the fastest. And, you know, music is like, to me, like music needs to be captured in the moment, right? A lot of times as producers, we forget that, you know, we are just like instrumentalists. We're just like somebody who's playing an instrument, but we produce the thing. We make the thing, and therefore it takes more time. But somebody who's just playing a guitar or playing a piano or playing drums, they're playing in the moment that it's happening. You know what I'm saying? And so as a producer, you kind of have to have that same feeling, but at the same time, but there's so many different steps. There's so many more steps that you have to go through, you know what I'm saying, to get to that point where you're like feeling musical and feeling all this stuff. And one of those is designing the sounds or just using a preset or performing the actual music. So like whatever gets you to that point where you can feel like I'm jamming, I'm making music.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because we forget
because that guitar player or that drummer is not sitting there and they're like, okay, looking at this. Oh, maybe like the headstock's a little weird, or maybe, you know, am I a little out of? You know, they're playing. They're in the moment. They're kind of. You know.
It's a black or white thing. It's either I'm not playing or I am playing. You know what I'm saying? And then of course, as a guitar player, like you get into like the whole like, oh, what's my tone? What's my amp? Blah blah blah. And every instrument I think has that. They have quality levels. They have different sounds, different tones. But like with producing, you're the whole band. You are the whole. You are the whole band. You are the bassist. You are the drummer. You are the synthesizer player.
And then you could be the mixer. Then you could be the
oh my god, you're the engineer. You could be the mastering engineer. Yeah. So
you need album art. Okay, that's you too, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, you know I mean? You're a promoter after that. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like you're the hype man. So
you're
like
the guy.
Oh my gosh. So there's so many different things to think about that, you know, the synthesizer should be. It's sort of where it all starts. You know,
it almost feels like interface 2 is definitely a high contender in that. You know what I mean? Because like, let's say we have all the check marks. That's weird. You have like the oscillators are good. The filters are good. You like how the envelopes work. You got some MSEGs in there. The filters are great. You can do multiple slot. You know, if you want 3 compressors, great. You can do that. But then how is the interface? Is it like a pain to work through? And that's an argument that I see a lot with Surge, right? I've seen, okay, this sounds really good. I like the effects. I like how it comes out, but the interface is a pain to work with. And
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the reasons why I use Serum on every single track, is because I know the interface so well and I can use it super fast and it's fluid. It's not like it holds me back. It doesn't hold me back. You know what I'm saying? The only thing that holds me back is myself. And yes, it only has one main filter and a filter in the effects section. So that's 2 filters. But you know, like, do I need any more? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, do I need anything more than that?
Yeah.
Like, do I need any other source of, because I have a sub oscillator there. I have a noise oscillator. Noise oscillator has a pitch knob. Like, it's like, it has all the things that I need. And I can do things very, very quickly. You know, people watch me on my tutorials and they're like, damn, Signs, you're so fast. Like, you're just blazing. And I'm like, well, hopefully I put a disclaimer on that I am going to go fast. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, this is how fast I can work in the synthesizer. Like, if I need a pluck, I can make it in less than 10 seconds. Just boom, and just move it and done. And then I'm moving on to the next thing. I'm moving on. Like, I'm making the music in the moment.
Yeah, and the interface helps you get there quicker and more efficiently.
You're not like
hindrance.
Like, okay, so yeah, that's a fair argument with Surge. The fucking, the amp envelope is all the way on the right-hand side. Like the filter envelopes are kind of hidden. You got to think about where you're doing the modulation is kind of weird. You have to click a button and then increase the amount and then off-click the button. It's like, okay, yeah, right. That's a pain, right? That's not easy and intuitive. But they have but Surge is something like, it's a project of love. That synthesizer is a community-driven synth. Where everyone
sound good. I got to hand it to it.
Everyone is putting their time and energy into that thing, and people who are developing it are offering up their algorithms for free, and they're doing all this. Like, that's just a love synthesizer. You know what I'm saying? Like,
a love synthesizer.
That's how I see it. I mean, we're recording this on Valentine's Day. It's like, that's how I see this. I see this as a community-driven project. So there's like, okay, maybe there's somebody who, they've sort of settled on a UI. That's cool. Maybe they don't have somebody who's there who could actually like overhaul the entire, usability of it. And that's fine.
Right.
It is what it is. But the sound quality is great. Like you can get some really good sounds out of that synthesizer, and it costs $0. It comes loaded with a bunch of wavetables. Some of them are wavetables from friends of mine who you can just like load it up and be like, okay.
There's a lot of shit to do in that one. Like, you probably won't get bored for a long time.
No. And there's a lot of effects in there too. Like I said, they've put all those air windows algorithms in there. Like, they put a bunch of these effects in there, which you won't find in most other places. And like, that's great. Like, you could use that. And if that's all you had, if you just had Surge XT, you had no money, no budget, that would be your best synth, because you could learn how to use it. You could get familiar with it. And the more I got familiar with Surge last year, I was like,
Yeah,
I started making little mini banks on my Patreon. I started throwing the banks up on Patreon. I'm like, here you go. Like, here's 5 more presets. Here's 5 more presets, because I just get inspired by the synthesizer and I like it.
Yeah.
Therefore, you guys can have it, because you all can have it. It's free. You know what I'm saying? Yep. It's like free for all. Like, here you go. But that in itself, like, I love that aspect of it. So.
So what would you say to someone that's like getting into this? Maybe they're pretty familiar with their DAW and synthesis for the most part, and they're looking for something like, I don't know exactly where I want to go. Do I want to more concentrate on pads or leads or bass, or like, do I want to do sequences? Do I want to do some really crazy arpeggios, or who knows what, right? Maybe they want to get into modular. So they're kind of looking for, like, they don't know yet what they don't know. Mm-hmm. So like, what would you give them, right? Because I think about that sometimes. I'm like, I know Falcon would cover every single thing, but I'm like, that's a huge hill to climb. Yeah. If you kind of don't know where you go, then you get Falcon, you're like, I don't even.
Well,
what?
like I said, you're the whole band. You have to do everything. So you're going to have to spend time learning one thing, and then moving on to another thing, and then moving on to another thing. And if your goal is just to make a track, then you start at the beginning. Whatever kind of music you're making. Some music doesn't even start with pads. Some music starts with, a beat, or maybe a bass line or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So like, right. I recognize that like the type of music that I make isn't the type of music that everyone makes. So you have to figure out, okay, where does that sound come from? How can I recreate that sound, or how can I get that sound, and then go from there? And that's why, as we talked about in a previous podcast, presets are kind of an important learning point, because you can learn from, other artists who've already made you a preset that might sound like something. You can buy preset packs in a certain style. You and I both make preset packs that are kind of tailor-made for certain specific types of music, right? And so you could start there and be like, okay, cool. Here I am. This is going to be my start, and that's completely legitimate. And it's a great way to start off your music career and start making some stuff. And even getting into synthesizers that you don't even, you might not have expected might be that, like buying like one of your packs, like a dark ambient, crazy, psycho,
it's so
disgusting
gross.
Pack for pigments. Like, I never tried pigments before. Let me buy John's pack and, get going. Cool. Or I never tried Vital before. Maybe I better buy Chris's anomaly patches and see how it goes. Like, those are great places to start. You know what I mean? Like, and so, you eventually like I said, you'll know when it's time to get a new synth. You'll know when it's time to focus on a certain aspect, because that's just, that's what we're doing here.
And be honest with yourself too, I think, right? Because So there's kind of like different cult followings behind different synths, right? And sometimes people will get them, and this is kind of non-transparently me, but like you'll get a synth and like, you know it's good, you know everybody loves it, but you just don't really feel good in it. Not because it's poorly designed, not because it sounds bad. It's just there's something about it that you're like, I don't know, maybe this one just isn't for me, and that happens sometimes. And that's kind of in a weird way serum for me. Like I do love it. I learned so much from it. That was a synth that I really grew with, but I never really reached for it because I have ones that I just like personally better. You know what I mean? So like, if you get something and you try it out, be honest with yourself, because if you keep trying to convince yourself that you like it, it's only going to hold you back after a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I totally agree. I also want to give a shout out to the Dawesome Synthesizers. Peter from Dawesome has just come out with some really interesting ideas in the past like
come out with?
2 years. Well, I mean, think about it. We started with Abyss, and then he came out with Cult, and he came out with Novum. He came out with Love, and then he's going to come out with another synth called Myth. I mean, he is on fire.
Damn.
Doing all these different things, to really kind of shake up the synthesizer game. You know what I'm saying?
And definitely needs it, yeah.
Yeah. So like that's another thing too, is there's all kinds of companies who are really trying to kind of break out of that traditional, framework. You know what I'm saying? Like make new stuff, make new things happen. You can make any sound with the 5 basic waveforms. You can make anything. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's all sine waves anyway. Like everything is sine waves. You know what I mean? It's all like just sine waves, right? It's all sine waves.
Right.
You and me talking, like everything is just all sine waves, right? So like you can just use a synth that just has the 5 basic waveforms and do anything. But if you really want to get into like more nuanced stuff, you could absolutely check out Peter's, stuff like that. I mean, Dawesome, Dawesome, like it's just he makes some great synthesizers. Also, Phase Plant is a really good option for people.
Yeah, that will grow with you. I don't think you can really outgrow.
You can't outgrow Phase Plant. When I got turned on to Phase Plant, it was like, whoa, like, wow. There's no end to this. You know what I'm saying? There's really no end to it, especially.
And the interface of that one is really good. I think I've told you before, but that's one of the few synthesizers out there where like, I love reading manuals, stay up late and read manuals. I love that shit. But like when I was first doing a Phase Plant, I loaded up the manual and I was reading, I'm like, I don't even need this. Like everything's so straightforward. It's so easy to use. Like where you think something should be is exactly where it is. The way you think it would work is how it works. It's right. I don't know. It's super intuitive.
But to a beginner, like with a blank canvas, that's like got to be like, oh my God, like what do I do now? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Like because Phase Plant starts, and if you make an init patch in Phase Plant, you have nothing. You have no effects. You have no oscillators, no nothing. So you have to build your synth from scratch. You have to put an oscillator in. You have to put an envelope in. You have to put the filter where it's supposed to be.
Would you say that one's more for someone that they know when they're ready to go down Phase Plants?
Yeah. I think when you're ready to walk down that path, when you're ready to drive down that road, that's what's waiting for you, is a synthesizer like Phase Plant, which is infinitely expandable. It's got a million different, modulation routings waiting for you, but you have to create them yourself. You know what I'm saying? You have to know what an LFO does. You have to know what an envelope does. You have to know how to use these sources of modulation, not to mention the whole point of Phase Plant is to modulate the phase of all these different aspects of it. It just gets really crazy. And, as crazy as we think synthesizers can be, like, is it usable? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think trying out different synthesizers and trying out what they can do is important because, just because a synthesizer can do something and is crazy doesn't mean it's going to work in the context of your own music. You know what I'm saying?
That's so true. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, just because it's like, wow, this has a granular engine on board, and I can modulate the FM with this granular like this, like the stuff that Pigments can do. Just going back to Pigments for example. I might not necessarily use that in a musical context because it sounds like absolute garbage. It's like, oh my God, like using Engine 2 as a modulation source on Oscillator 1. This is totally geeky talk, but you guys understand what I'm talking about.
Absolutely,
yeah. When you crank that up and you start cranking up the modulation on all those amounts, it's like, this sounds like this is just noise. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I never really do that.
Just because you can do that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea or it's going to sound musical.
Right.
So you have to make that choice and you have to make that distinction. And that's, again, what constitutes the best. So that's one kind of vote against getting G.A.S. is like, just because a synthesizer can do something doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. You know,
or is it going to sound good?
Because companies are going to offer you feature after feature after this after that, and it's like, oh my god, like wow, this has got to be the best because the marketing is really good on it. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you know, would that be, you know, something that you could, you know, viably use? That's up to you. And
which
that's
just
why,
goes to show, like, the more features doesn't necessarily make it the best, so to speak, right? Like, I recently made this video about the Jupiter 8. It sounds so good. It's straightforward. It's kind of similar to the Juno as well. Like, it doesn't do everything out there in the sun that these new modern synths can do. I mean, Arturia has added some extra features, you know, up in the advanced tab.
Yeah.
But like, they're very basic synthesizers, but they just sound so good. You put a little resonance on there, do a filter, sweep, and hold down a chord. Hot damn, man. That's a good day right there. You're like, oh, okay. You know what I mean?
Right.
And maybe for doing synthwave stuff, maybe that one is your best synth.
Yeah. So understanding the basics of sound design, knowing, you know, how to use these tools really does give you an advantageous position when you're approaching, like, okay, what's my next synthesizer? What do I need in this situation? Because you'll, like I said, you'll know that if the company is touting those crazy features, if those are going to work for you or not. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You'll be able to evaluate, okay, do I need this synthesizer based on that? You know, or can I just use what I have? Or do exactly what I can do with that? You know what I'm saying? I got caught up in that for a long time where I was like, oh, I need this, I need that, I need this because I need that sound. And then I realized, like, oh my God, like I've got so much that I could do it myself. Like I could do this myself. I could do that myself. So I got into I reached full gas. I reached max gas. You know what I'm saying? And then I sort of went max gas. And then I was like, oh, like it was almost like that moment where, like, you know, the story of the Buddha where he grew up in a rich family and then he went out and he's like, damn, like I have so much. Like I just need to like peace out and go live with nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like I need to go just sit on this rock and look at this river and I'm gonna sit here until, well, I don't know what, I become enlightened or whatever, right? So I did the same thing with synthesizers. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna just use what I got. And I'm just gonna, it doesn't even, the two stories don't even relate to each other very well. But at the same time, I got to that point where I was like, I have everything I need and I can probably do a lot with much less. And so I started trimming things down. I started removing things from my arsenal. I started getting back to the basics. And that's what led me to understanding synthesis at a fundamental level, to the point where, oh my God, all you need is one oscillator. All you need is a filter. You know what I'm saying? All you need is this one thing. And that's why I think a lot of people are so excited, speaking of the future, about Zebra 3, I
cannot wait. I'm so excited.
People are so excited. Why? Because it's a free synthesizer. I say Zebra 3 is not 3, but Zebralette is going to be a free synthesizer that you're going to be able to use that has one oscillator. And it's a preview of what they're doing for Zebra 3. But at the same time, it's so minimal, yet so powerful that it's like people are really excited about it. I mean, never before have I seen so many people pumped about a one oscillator free synthesizer ever.
With no filter.
Which
is kind of funny. It's like the oscillator effects, right? That tripped me out on
There's
on
no
Zebralette
filter.
too.
And they're like, yeah, this is the best. And I've heard some of the examples and I'm like, damn, that sounds good. You know what I'm saying? Because like I said in the previous podcast, it's all math. When you listen to Yuhi, you're listening to all mathematics live. So
that is still the best wavetable interpolation that I've ever heard.
Right. So that's another thing, is like you could do a lot with just a little. You know what I'm saying?
But maybe that goes into the wine tasting thing too. Like we're kind of like getting in the nitty gritty, like, oh, the interpolation, the math is so good. And we're like, this will pair. You know what I mean? Like this will pair with this reverb, right? But I guess if you're not enthusiastic about it, why are you doing it? You know what I'm saying? If you don't have that same level of passion, like you're like, okay, you know, I have to listen to that sine wave through a reverb. God damn it!
Yeah, listen to sine wave.
Sounds so good.
Right, exactly. You know, back to Yuhi. You know, they make quality after quality product. Like every product they make is good. And I don't
know how they do it. Like every single one.
I just think his approach to design And the way he methodically goes about things, he doesn't release things until they're ready. Every decision that he makes is very like intentional. All the product line makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like Diva makes sense, and it's not Hive. It's not Zebra. Diva is its own thing. Ace is its own thing. Even Repro is its own thing. You know what I'm saying? Like they all have their own slot in the UHE lineup, and now they're just like going back to the original roots of it. Like I said, I bought Zebra 1 when it was still in beta. You know what I'm saying? Like I bought the advanced license.
Yeah.
And so now we have the third iteration of this synthesizer. And it's like an AutoCAD synthesizer on steroids. Like
AutoCAD, yeah.
It literally is. It's
this week or maybe next week I was reading.
And everybody's like, really it's going to be out next week. And people are like, it's wild. It's super crazy. And okay, cool. Will everybody jump on the Zebra 3 train when it's out? Yes. Do they need it? Probably not.
But remember, if you want it bad enough, you need it.
If you want it bad enough, it's self-care.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
All the Gen Z, they like that one. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like a big thing. Anyway, so we've shouted out a lot of companies today, but I think we've covered a lot of ground. In terms of like, okay, making informed decisions. Learning about the core fundamentals of what you're doing really does help you in that regard. And, understanding the differences between certain products and then knowing how they impact your workflow. You
got to know the differences. That's one of the biggest things, right?
You got to know.
You got to know that.
Mm-hmm. So if you do, great. Then you're well on your way. This podcast episode isn't about making the music. It's just about the tools that we're using. But the tools that we're using do influence our decisions while producing the music. And, hopefully people found this inspiring and informative because we all need a little help. You know what I'm saying? We all need a little advice. You know what I'm saying?
And follow your heart. If you love whatever synth that you're using, but maybe this week you're feeling like, I want to load up Hive and just have a week of Hive, do that. Oh, yeah. Then once you explore that happiness using Hive, and then maybe if that wears off and you go back to Pigments or something different. Yeah. Oh man, you're going to get that feeling every single time. And it's so good. Yeah. It's so good.
Spend some time with your tools, no matter what it is, read the manual. I have a whole folder on my hard drive just dedicated to manuals. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a whole long list just of manuals where I'm just like, okay, what does this do? What does this do? How do I do this? What, features are unique here? Like I go through them because I love them. And I also want to know what am I not utilizing on this synth to make my workflow better? You know what I'm saying?
It's a fun time.
Yeah.
Like Diva's manual is really fun to read through.
Oh, all the UHE manuals are great. All of them.
I like them. Yeah.
All of them. They're so good. The best manual I've ever read was the Hydrosynth manual.
I think you mentioned that one time.
Yeah, it's so good because it's like really straightforward. And it's also like, you just understand everything that he's talking about. Like it's written in the best English I've ever read. So
like it's literally a book about your synth. I mean, it's amazing.
But compared to what we used to have, you know what I'm saying? With like the freaking big old thick manuals of like the old days. Like I didn't even read those back then, but my boy Don said that he used to just stay up late night and read like the DX7 manual, you know what I'm saying? By candlelight.
I mean, that one is kind of cool. The kind of boring, kind of interesting ones when I was learning Pro Tools a long time ago, it was like the 210, the 210p and those manuals, which they're kind of cool, but
that's really geeky stuff.
I mean, they were like thick, dude. They were hundreds of pages long.
So getting to know your tools, that's super important because if you do, then you're just going to have a better perspective on it and you're going to know what to reach for in any given situation. So that's what it's all about. All right. Best synth.
Synth. I wonder what everyone else is going to say.
Yet. It's Zebra 3. It's not even out yet. So
it's the best one. It's the best one. I trust you so much.
The community has already decided. We don't even have Zebralette, and they've already decided. It's just
I'm getting my tattoo tomorrow. We should get matching zebra tattoos.
Oh yeah, let's do it, bro. Yeah. I'll get the little weird AutoCAD waveform thing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I was thinking just actual zebra. Oh, maybe that's a little too weird.
No, hey, listen.
Or half the zebra, the other, I don't know.
You do
just
you.
kind of brainstorming.
You know what I'm saying, bro? All right.
But yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching and are also listening if you're listening to the audio version. And if you can comment, I'm kind of curious, what is your favorite synth or what is your best synth in your opinion? Which one does the best things for you? Which one makes you happy?
That's what's up, right? Just give us your opinion, and we'll see you guys.
And I will tell you why you're wrong in his pigments. Okay, I had to get it out.
See you guys in the next one.
All right, guys. See you on the next one.
If you're interested in supporting the podcast, please subscribe to the S1gns Of L1fe and Jon Audio channels on YouTube. The link for our channels is down below in the description and in the show notes. For the video version of this show, please subscribe to the Harmonic Horizons YouTube channel to keep up with all the latest episodes. For bonus content, including additional podcast material, head over to the S1gns Of L1fe Patreon page. Paid members get access to Beyond the Horizon, our new series of extended conversations with our guests, as well as several other benefits such as early access to all of his videos, exclusive ambient tutorials, over 100 preset packs for various synthesizers, one-on-one coaching for ambient and electronic music, and tons more. If you'd like to support Jon Audio and the work he does, head over to his YouTube channel and subscribe. You can also check out his Gumroad page for a selection of free and paid preset packs. Finally, he has a Patreon page where subscribers get access to additional content, such as exclusive music, presets for various synths such as Pigments and Diva, specialized courses, and more. Harmonic Horizons is hosted on Buzzsprout and is now available on all major platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and all other major podcast directories. If you'd like to reach out to us or would like to be a guest on the show, you can contact us at harmonichorizonspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.